This is the Commissioner Evaluation, Dynasty Evaluation show. It'll kind of be a combo thing. I'm converting my name back and forth, trying to rebrand this so it's not just a Commissioner show, but it's Dynasty Talk. And today I got my co-host with the Mo-host, JT. We're going to have this draft, the rookie draft we just did a couple days ago. I imported a handful of friends and guys from my home leagues to do a way too early rookie mock draft. Some names I, was unfamiliar with popped up in here, so it's nice that I get to study some players. But we're going to go through this today and go 5 rounds of rookie mock draft and tell you guys how it went, how it shook out, where guys fell, and why we picked where we picked. And, we won't make it too long, but we'll try to, make everybody learn something today. So let's get started.
McGlynn is in. I repeat, McGlynn is in. Let the fun begin. This is the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with your host, John McGlynn.
Is that Herms?
He got them guests on the Rolodex, stopping by to talk about some Dynasty Superflex. Everybody, yo, Commish is in. It's time to sit down to listen to John McGlynn. Yo, who we trading, who we fading, who we getting off the squad. Knowledge never overrated, playing for number one. Hey, yo, McGlynn is in. It's time to let the fun begin. It's the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with John McGlynn.
Thank you all for joining in. So let's, JT, what do you think about this draft?
Yeah, it was a good one. I mean, I think, I know everybody says, hey, you don't even know what teams these guys are on. Doesn't make sense to do them right now. I do. I like him, kind of familiarizes yourself with some guys. And I think, too, for me, it gives me an idea where I kind of like guys or where guys are falling. And then you can kind of compare that data later when guys get drafted. And you can say, hey, is this guy who was getting taken in like the early second or mid-second round now, people are taking him in the 4th round because they didn't like his landing spot. They think he's kind of buried on the depth chart, whatever reason. Then you can maybe get some steals. You can snake a guy that you're like, oh, don't forget about him just because everybody else doesn't like him because of the landing spot. You can maybe get a sneaky good player that, if he had a better landing spot, would have went a lot higher. So I like to look at that data because I think that makes a difference for me too. And just not forgetting about guys that I like pre-draft that all of a sudden everybody hates because wherever they got picked. I think sometimes going back and look at that can help.
Yeah, I mean, guys like, JSN, for example, fell in a spot where he's kind of behind the depth chart right now. He didn't do too well as a rookie, although he did produce. He's someone that this year, after the first year, when people may be down on him, like you got to sneak in and grab guys like that because there's an opening. Don't pass on the player's talent. Stick with your evaluations. Go with what got you there kind of thing. Why do you love this player? What research did you do that got you to the point of drafting this guy in your rookie draft? So these are the things you look at. Don't just throw in a towel because you land in a bad spot or, this is Dynasty. We're talking about Dynasty fantasy football in a rookie draft. It may take a year, 2 years. The best time to buy some of these rookies is year 2 when they can finally get their breakout. They had a couple good games at the end of the season when the coach was trying to see what they had in a player. And then year 2, bam, the breakout comes. So I'm buying a lot of those guys, but let's evaluate why some of these guys are where they're at in the early process. And trending is my favorite thing to do with this stuff. It's early now. Every week I'll do a new rookie mock draft and see where guys are going up from, the first pick to the 3rd pick to the 5th pick, back and forth. Who is not even listed on these boards right now that maybe shoot up to the, in the 2nd round of rookie picks when it comes draft time in June, July, August, September, kind of, that kind of stuff. So we'll get to it, but our first pick was this is a dynasty, just so we're all on the same page here. This is a dynasty rookie draft. It is Superflex and tight end premium. So we had a quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 flex players, a Superflex, no kicker, no defense. The hokey mailman. It's Chris Joel Smith.
I think he changed his name because I was like, I know who that guy is. What's up, buddy?
You got a job as a mailman now, so that's good for you. UPS, USPS, baby, all the way. So this is although it's Superflex, the first pick in this draft was Marvin Harrison Jr. The next coming of all the greats that ever came in the NFL before. This is it, the best ever, Marvin Harrison Jr. JT, you had the luxury of somebody having fallen in a Superflex draft, somebody falling right in your lap. What happened here?
Yeah, I was actually 1-2 in this draft. I got Caleb Williams with the 1-2, most likely the number 1 overall pick in the real NFL draft. Obviously, he's going to be a hot commodity in Superflex. I've got some leagues where I'm going to be drafting in the top 3, and that number 2 pick is going to be real interesting. That 2 and 3 pick to see if it QBs get to me or whether depending on my team build, whether I want to go someone like Marvin Harrison or the guy that went 3rd in this draft, Brock Bowers. How do you want to kind of mix that up? But there's going to be some people that maybe like Drake May or Jaden Daniels or somebody better than Caleb Williams, and maybe you'll see that shocker in one of your drafts. But I'd be surprised if it's not a super small percentage that doesn't have Caleb Williams 1-1 or 1-2, and then same thing Marvin Harrison, either him at the 1-1 or the 1-2.
Yeah, so I have these. This is my list. I got some notes on here, some of the players. I'm not sure how much of this stuff you guys can see, but it's the list of my players, kind of where they were drafted, where they're ranked on some other sites, and then their age. I got a lot more stuff to fill in here, but this is my initial setup of how I rank my players and the notes I have accumulated from different podcasts, different shows, different YouTube channels, different evaluations. So I've done quite a bit of homework already on a lot of these guys. I have a lot more homework to do, but this is where we're getting our data from. And I even though these guys are in draft where they're drafted at, I had them listed on our draft. How it went. So number 3 in tight end premium, like I said, it's 0.75 tight end premium. Brock Bowers went 3rd. Not crazy, especially in tight end premium, especially because there's not many tight ends in this draft. So, Brock Bowers is not surprising to see him go in the top, 5. I've seen him going anywhere from like 5 to 7 threes. To be honest with you, 3 is probably one of the higher ones that I've seen. So
I could see him as high as 3. And to tell you the truth, John, depending on where he ends up landing in the NFL draft, if he's with a really good offense, a spot where he can really make some noise, because the guy can do everything. That's what people are saying. He's not a normal tight end. At Georgia, they handed the ball off to him. He ran the ball a ton. He had like a 75-yard touchdown run this year. I mean, the guy isn't just like, oh, well, we did the, inside tight end handoff on the 1-yard line. Like, no, he legit got carries. The guy is great space. He's fast as can be. The guy's got wide receiver speed. I could see it. If I'm in a league that's a start 2 tight end, there's a case that Brock Bowers might be number 1 overall. If you're in a start 2 tight end, 2-point premium, I can see people going with a Brock Bowers number 1 overall. So it definitely depends on your setup. Obviously, the higher the premium, the higher I'd take them. And again, it depends on your build. If you've got a pretty solid team that's really missing a tight end in a tight end premium league, I could see if you're in that top 3, 4, 5, I could definitely see, going Brock Bowers.
Have you seen the clips of, first of all, him standing next to Gronk, and Gronk's like,
oh, hilarious on X.
There's the thing. I'm a little bit scared that I've seen a lot of clips of Brock Bowers just getting absolutely smoked by big defensive ends and linebackers blitzing. So I'm a little bit concerned about his blocking. That's the only part of his game that I'm kind of worried about.
The blocking is going to have to improve, but I have to be honest with you, the kind of athlete he is and the player he is, I don't know if you want him in blocking all that often. In reality, in the NFL, I want that guy out in space. I want that guy catching passes. I want that guy burning linebackers. I want mismatches with him. He's going to have to get a little stronger. He's going to have to improve his blocking. That is for sure. But he is definitely not a guy that you want in blocking. He's not Sam Laporta. We'll just say that. So somebody's like, oh, Sam Laporta, Dynasty tight end 1 for a lot of people now after the great rookie year. He is absolutely not Sam Laporta. He's a totally different type of tight end. He's not the same comp, but what I kind of would say, he's more of like, he feels more of like a Jimmy Graham, Dallas Clark, Greg Olsen type of tight end, in the fact that those guys could block. They weren't known for their blocking. They were mostly known for getting out in space and catching the ball and getting mismatches. That's where I think Bowers is going to make his money. Can he chip block guys? Can he do a little bit? Yes, he's going to have to do that. But I think he's a guy you're going to see split out in the slot a lot of times. I think he's going to be used a lot more like a Kyle Pitts, hopefully where they give him the ball a lot more than Kyle Pitts, but I think he's that type of athlete that you're just not going to want to keep him in and blocking all that often.
Yeah, he does. I mean, the thing is for a guy that kind of gets manhandled a little bit in the blocking game, he sure breaks a lot of tackles, and he sure like makes people miss and like kind of fights off a 2 and 3 gang tackle kind of guys, and he, holds on to the ball pretty well. So, yeah, I get it. But that's Brock Bowers. We all know his name. He's one of the popular ads this season. So we'll keep it moving here. Drake May was number 4, quarterback North Carolina, which is not surprising. This is a super flex draft. So. And then Malik Neighbors, which, people are saying 1A, to Marvin Harrison. This is, 1A, one kind of not so much wide receiver 2, like a 1A kind of thing. So, next 2 picks, Drake May, Malik Neighbors, thoughts?
Yeah. So here's the thing for me. There's going to be a lot of people as we get closer and closer to draft, because everybody always kind of wants to look at things differently. You can see there's going to be people that take Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, here's also what you're going to see. If you end up seeing Marvin Harrison Jr. on the Patriots and Malik Neighbors on the Chargers, you are going to have a whole lot of people take Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr. because of the landing spot.
Right.
So, like, those are the types of things you got to be aware. And that's why I like to see these. Where's my rankings on a guy I like? And then I'll make the adjustments when they get drafted on whether that's a huge difference for me. Because I think the same thing happens with Jaden Daniels. I think the same thing happens with Drake May. Depending on where those guys end up and get drafted, I think that could affect a lot of people's thought on whether they take them or not.
Yeah.
Does somebody trade up and take Drake May? Does, do the Raiders do something crazy, trade up and get like a Jaden Daniels? I know there's reports out there that are saying, oh, we like Aiden O'Connell, we're sticking with him. I like O'Connell too, but I would be surprised if they don't do anything in there. But, do people like that in your draft? Is somebody like, oh, I like the Raiders. I think, Jalen Daniels is a great fit there. I'm going to take him over those other guys. If Jaden Daniels ends up on the Patriots per se. Now Bill Belichick's gone. We got a whole new coaching staff there. But you're going to have people that are going to have that holdover for when they hated having anyone on the Patriots on their fantasy roster. You're going to have those people who are like, oh, I don't want Jaden Daniels if he's in New England.
Right.
But if he ends up, on the Commanders, do you like him a lot more on the Commanders? Do you like him a lot more on another team? So that's where, like I said, I want to evaluate here, kind of see what people are thinking, where their rankings are, who they like, and then I can adjust, post-draft.
I would better have Jaden Daniels than Drake May right now, to be honest with you. So that's just me, but I mean,
if you're in a league, especially, he's got the running upside. Here's the thing: is Drake May has way more running upside than I think people understand. I think he can actually run the ball a decent amount. Now, he didn't run as much this past season because their running game with Hampton was much, much improved. But he actually ran the ball a decent amount the year before. So he's not a stone statue either. Bigger guy, obviously. Jaden Daniels, elite runner. Over 1,000 yards rushing in college. The biggest issue, and I've spoke about this for over a year now. Jaden Daniels takes a lot of crazy hard hits. A lot of hits. He's going to have to figure out how to not take those hits in the NFL. If you go back and you watch a bunch of his college game tape, guy's a great athlete. Guy gets on the sideline, busts out huge touchdown runs, but man, he takes some monster licks in games. In licks he doesn't need to take. Like licks where he could have just stepped out of bounds. He could have slid. He could have just like dove forward. And he like runs right at a guy and just absolutely gets lit up. And you're like, what are you doing, man? So that was my big knock on him going into this season. And I saw it a little bit this season. He's not going to be able to do that at the NFL level, or he is going to get destroyed. I mean, he's a tall guy, but he's lanky. So he's definitely going to have a coach say, hey, you cannot take those types of hits in the NFL. Even Anthony Richardson, who's much bigger than Jaden Daniels, found out early, getting hit in the NFL is not like getting hit in college.
Right.
Like, he got whacked, and he's bigger than a lot of the linebackers that are hitting him. But he found out, man, those guys are not just going to bump you. They're going to whack you. And I think Daniels is going to have to learn that pretty quick, because if he gets the legs going on the right NFL team, the huge rushing upside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then after the quarterbacks went, we had a run of wide receivers: Roma Dunze, Troy Franklin, Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy. All four of those guys went in a row. Any of those 40 you'd take? Would you change the order at all? You're pretty happy with those selections. Xavier Worthy seems to be falling in drafts. It kind of worries me a little bit. He was one of the top chatterboxes, and when all this process started. Now he's up. He's like down to wide receiver. What is this, like a 9 now or a 6 now or whatever it is, 7?
He would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He would be 6th on our list here. I've seen him pretty much on most people's lists somewhere between 5 and 10. Now, the issue with Worthy, the stuff you love, he has all those early expectations where he broke out at a super early age, broke out as a true freshman. He's got all those metrics going for him. Now, the issue for him, super small. The guy is tiny. He's like 170. But again, I can't necessarily complain about that because I love Jordan Addison. And Jordan Addison isn't big, and he was my favorite wideout coming in last year's draft. And I thought he was really good for the Vikings. And I think he's going to continue to be good if they have a good quarterback with Justin Jefferson on the other side. I think he's going to get plenty of looks. So in today's game, you don't have to be huge. So I think that really helps Worthy. But I think he's a divisive guy. I've seen people that absolutely love him. And I've seen a lot of people like, I've watched tape. I don't understand why people love him. And then there's other guys like, man, he's so fast. He's twitchy as can be. He breaks it out of routes. I just think the biggest movers and shakers you're going to see in these drafts are between these wide receivers moving up and down, depending on landing spot and draft capital, and then the running backs who all get taken late. Where do they end up landing? Because I think you're going to end up with a lot of guys going between rounds 4 and 7. And it's going to be like, oh, I'm taking this guy in the 6th round instead of this guy that got drafted in the 4th because I love his landing spot better, even though he got drafted 2 rounds later.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see a lot of that with the running backs once the NFL draft actually happens. But I think you're going to see a lot of these guys move up and down because I think outside of Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and Roma Dunze, almost everyone has those as their top 3 in some order. You know, you do have some Dunze truthers who think he should be number 1 overall over all those guys. I think those guys are pretty much top 3 for almost everyone. But, man, it really, really changes after that. I mean, I've seen people that love Keon Coleman. I've seen people saying, I'm not drafting him no matter what. I've seen the same thing with Worthy. People like, I'm taking him, 1-6, 1-7, 1-8. And I've seen people like, yeah, he's not there for me. Same thing with Troy Franklin. And I think, see some of these other guys we're going to talk about, later in the draft here, Brian Thomas, Adonai Mitchell, Ladd McConkey, Xavier Legette. There's a lot of these guys sitting out there that wherever they end up is going to make a big difference on where people take them. Does a guy get into the late 1st, early 2nd, or does he drop to the late 2nd, early 3rd, depending on if he goes in the late 3rd round as opposed to early 2nd round in the NFL draft? Where does that and does he end up on a team? You're like, ooh, they got a good QB. He slots right in as a starter, or you're like, hey, I like that guy, but he's behind 3 other studs. Fantasy wise, like how is he ever going to get any touches? So I think these things are going to be very fluid over the next, couple months.
Yeah, people are going to watch day 1 and day 2 of the draft, and if they don't see some of these guys on there, they're going to just say, that guy didn't, he's
they're going to bail on
day
him.
3 guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So, with this, the pick 11 and 12 were quarterbacks back to back, Michael Penix and Bo Nix. A lot of question marks on both of these guys. The lefty thing kind of is a taboo in the NFL. Like, everybody, it's hard to see the way he throws. The guys can't catch. The ball rotates different, all that kind of stuff. Penix played pretty well. He unfortunately, in the championship game, he got beat up. He didn't throw the ball that well. Some, a lot of criticism for the guy. But don't take one game. It's like a lot of people are taking all these Senior Bowl chatters right now about, this guy didn't do well at the Senior Bowl, so he's terrible. Like, you got 3 or 4 years of tape and information and scouting and all this stuff on these players. Don't take one game or one Senior Bowl kind of a quote and make all your assumption on that. The guy played pretty well, and Bo Nix in Oregon, he didn't do well early in his career, but I mean, when he went to Oregon, the guy produced big time. So our first round was Marvin Harrison Jr., Caleb Williams, Brock Bowers, Drake May, Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, Roma Dunze, Troy Franklin, Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy, Michael Penix, and Bo Nix was to round out the entire first round. So, how did that go, JT? Pretty much as expected almost, right?
Yeah, I think that's nice. I mean, for me, Michael Penix and Bo Nix are going to be, I mean, it's going to be wild where they go. I mean, really, I think it's going to be wild to see where they end up. Personally, I love those guys in CFF. They were huge producers, put up numbers. I'm not seen at the NFL level. I'm really not. I'm real worried about both these guys at the next level. I'm really interested to see what NFL scouts think. I mean, you are just like me. I'm looking at every mock draft on every site every day. I'm checking out stuff. I want to see who's taking people where, when. I like to look at the national media to see who they think people are going to take. And then I like to look at fantasy, obviously, because we're a fantasy show. I like to look at fantasy wise. What does that mean? Fantasy, and where are fantasy people drafting guys? Because there's a big difference. I mean, I've seen people, Phoenix, Knicks get into the first round here. I've seen NFL draft scouts think that Phoenix is going in the first round, Knicks is going in the first round, and I've seen other ones that are like, there's no way these guys are going before the late second or maybe even third or fourth rounds. So again, if you get Michael Penix goes in the third round, even in Superflex, is he going to go in your first round? I don't know, unless you're someone who's really hard up for a QB, or he goes to a team where a really old quarterback, and you think, hey, even if he sits a year, he can play the next year. Same thing with Bo Nix. If he goes to a spot where you're like, ooh, I like that spot, he's probably not going to start this year. But I saw him pick to the Rams to be the heir apparent for Matthew Stafford. Now, if Bo Nix goes in the first round of the Rams, he's probably going in the first round of your fantasy draft.
Right.
Because people are like, oh, okay, a year or two of Stafford, then I get a first round Bo Nix. That, to me, that's tough. I don't know if I see it in either one of these guys. You're always going to get heights from the QB. I mean, remember when we all loved Hendon Hooker, and now people aren't even talking about Hendon Hooker because why? Jared Goff has played great, and all of a sudden it was like, 2 years ago, it was like, how quickly are the Lions going to move off of Jared Goff? How quickly are they going to draft a quarterback? Everyone's like, oh, you got to trade up to the first round and draft a QB. And they seem pretty happy with Jared Goff.
Yeah.
So you just don't know how that works. But I also always bring up this story before the draft with Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen, Darnold, Lamar Jackson. I had 100% convinced myself all pre-drafts I took Lamar Jackson. And I'm like, I'm taking Lamar Jackson. And I had a 2 QB league. I needed a QB. I'm like, I'm taking Lamar Jackson. Well, he gets drafted by the Ravens. They still have Joe Flacco, who's like, a year or two removed from a Super Bowl at that point. He'd only been a couple years out from the Super Bowl. They were still winning it in the playoffs. I convinced myself not to take Lamar Jackson because what did I think? I thought, damn, he's going to end up sitting for at least 2 years, maybe 3 behind Joe Flacco before they move on. You just don't trade a Super Bowl winning QB, even though I'm not a Joe Flacco fan. I just didn't think the Ravens would do it. But what happens? Joe Flacco gets hurt. Lamar's rookie year, Lamar takes over, plays great. They bail on Joe Flacco, and Lamar takes over year 2. And I'm like, and then I'm killing myself because I was like, I only didn't take Lamar because I convinced myself that he wasn't going to play for 3 years, and wasting a first round pick on a guy that was going to sit for 3 years was a waste. And so I took Josh Rosen. How well did that freaking work?
Yeah, buddy.
Terrible. Josh Rosen. I'm like, hey, he's going to start. Arizona's terrible. I'm taking him because they have to start him. What happens? They pick Kyler Murray number 1 the very next year.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're not going to draft a quarterback. They just took a quarterback. They just traded up for a quarterback. Nope. Worst team in the league. Draft Kyler Murray. So that's why I say I like to do these early round mocks because I like to see where I was taking a guy who I liked and then evaluate the difference on landing spot. And that Lamar Jackson is the perfect situation where I should have taken him anyway because that was my guy. I had him as my player. I thought he had the highest upside, and I convinced myself that and I'm telling you right now, if Josh Rosen had gone to like the Jets instead of Sam Darnold, I wouldn't have taken Josh Rosen.
Right.
I convinced myself that the landing spot of Arizona was really good for him. Him being a West Coast kid, them not having much, he was going to absolutely get every opportunity to be the starter and take over. And I talked myself because of landing spot into Josh Rosen and because of landing spot out of Lamar.
Yeah,
I
the
don't
big
want
thing
to
about
ever do that again.
the big thing about that is offense has changed too. You look at what did the Ravens do when they had Joe Flacco compared to when they got Lamar Jackson. The entire offense, you couldn't even tell it was the same team the way they ran the offense after that. So they can alter the offense to accommodate some of these players' skill sets. So you're not like, oh, this guy's a running quarterback, it's a throwing offense, it's not going to happen. Man, things can change really fast in the NFL to accommodate a team, a player, a situation. So don't throw guys in the garbage if you land in a bad spot. You never know.
Yep.
If you get a receiver that ends up in the Patriots, let's just say like something does happen where Marvin Harrison Jr. does end up in the Patriots. It's not the old Bill Belichick system, even though
Exactly.
Mayo is a cipher of Bill Belichick.
Belichick, but he's a defensive guy. They're going to get an offensive coordinator. They're going to figure out how to use him. And then, like you said, how many guys get fired now? Like all the time. Guys
All the
get
time.
dumped constantly with the salary cap restrictions. You think guys are locked up there? They're out in 1 or 2 years. I'm like, hey, this running back, oh, we're cutting him. We're going to save a bunch of money. Oh, this quarterback, we're cutting him. Who would have guessed Jimmy G leads the Niners to the Super Bowl, and then 2 years later, where he's not even on the Niners anymore? They've
Right.
like scrapped him, and they've gone and got a bunch of new guys. You just never know. So that's why I'm saying landing spot. AJ Brown, another great example. He
Sure.
fell in a ton of drafts because people were like, the Titans. Oh my God. He'll never get the ball. Well, boom, gets traded to the Eagles. And now for everybody, he's a top 5 guy. You know what I'm saying? So you be very careful. Don't completely talk yourself in or out of situations because of landing spot, because it can burn you. And that's why I like to have these lists in front of me. Because if I get to a point where I'm like, it gets to me, and there was an AJ Brown, say Troy Franklin's my guy. I love Troy Franklin. And instead of going to the Chiefs, he ends up going to like the Bengals, and he ends up being behind whoever. Say they re-signed T. Higgins, but then they still draft Troy Franklin. Am I going to be just totally out on Troy Franklin because he went to the Bengals and he looks like the third wide receiver? I don't know. You might want to make that move and take him anyway. So just something to think about, and some of these guys, like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, nobody was thinking, if you wouldn't done mock drafts, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was no way he was going in the top 2 to 3 rounds in any mocks. And then he ends up going the first round to the Chiefs, and because it's the Chiefs and a first round running back, everyone's like, got to take him number 1 overall. Got to take him over Jonathan Taylor. And I told everybody, I'm like, I'm a Colts fan. Everybody knows that. So I was like, hey, I'm taking JT as a Colts fan, but I was like, JT is by far the best running back I've seen in a long time. And I was like, just because he's not going in the first round or he wasn't the first quarter running back taken, there was no way you were going to convince me to take someone over Jonathan Taylor, especially another running back. If you wanted to go quarterback or wide receiver, you could have talked me into that. But I was 100%, I'm going JT. He was my number 1 going into this draft. And just because he got taken in the second round by the Colts and CH went in the first, to me, that made no difference to me. I was taking JT 100% over him. So I think sometimes you got to just look at those situations.
Yeah, a situation like our guy like Brian Thomas next from we talked about him earlier, how he could be. I named off the 4 players that are drafted 7, 8, 9, and 10, and Brian Thomas could surpass all 4 of those guys with a good landing spot, and I think he's maybe possibly a better player than some guys up on that list also. So
he's a bigger guy. Some people are going to want him just because he's a bigger player. If he goes to a high-powered offense, I could really see him being the number 4. I've seen a lot of mocks for Brian Thomas as number 4 off the board as a wide receiver.
If he goes to the Bills or something like that, where he's a big guy, a contested catch guy, about over 50% contested catch kind of guy. Like, I mean, man, that he's averaging like almost 6 yards after the catch on his, so he's kind of a yak dude. So, I mean, if he goes in the first round, like let's just say even like to Buffalo or who else is a
Kansas City. I mean, maybe Jacksonville. I've seen a lot of landing spots that have him going maybe to the Jags, Dallas. I mean, you put him opposite CeeDee Lamb, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, oh, I'm all on that. CeeDee Lamb's going to get 1 million catches, but Brian Thomas is going to be in single coverage all day long.
Right.
And he's going to be, and we've seen, if you're in a high-powered offense, 2 and even 3 passing weapons can be fantasy gold. So it's like, just because the guy's not one, that's why I said people were like Jordan Addison, ooh, he's got Justin Jefferson. I'm like, they still got to throw the ball to somebody else. He doesn't get every catch. I mean, Adam Thielen still had a lot of catches when Justin Jefferson was there.
Yeah.
So like somebody else has still got to get the ball when you have a team that throws the ball a lot. So, and again, the number 2 or the number 3 on certain teams are going to be better than the number 1 on other teams.
Yeah.
Just for the fact of like how the system is run, how often they throw compared to running. So again, Brian Thomas, again, I think he's a guy. He's the guy with a high. If he goes first round and goes to a pretty solid team, he's a guy I could see flying up boards.
Next pick, Trey Benson, 28 games in college with no fumbles. And this is 21 years old. He's only 21 years old also. So he's the first running back off the board. And then Blake Corum. That's a bit of a difference here between Trey Benson and Blake Corum. You know, that's I'm a Blake Corum guy, but this may be a little early this may be some Michigan fan here that kind of likes Blake Corum. I'm a little bit early for me, but that's okay. It is what it is. And
so I took Trey Benson at the 2-1, at the 2-2. So that was my pick.
Good pick.
Trey Benson for me is my RB1 in this class. Now, again, like some of these wide receivers, you know, you're going to have a huge group of people that say Trey Benson,
Jonathan
Blake
Brooks,
Corum, Braylon Allen, Jonathan Brooks. Pretty much those 4 guys are the guys that most people are vying 1 through 4. Now, some people throw Bucky Irvin or a Marshawn Lloyd in the top 4 or 5, but those are mostly the top 4 guys everyone's talking about. Landing spot and where these guys could go could be huge. I could see some of these guys going in the second round, but I could also see all of them for different reasons dropping to the 3rd or 4th round. And here's the thing. I'm not going to hate them just because they got taken in the 3rd or 4th round. To me, I'm not selling on those guys. If I need running back and young guys, I'm doing it. I watched a lot of Florida State the last 2 years. Benson got hurt at Oregon before he transferred to Florida State. Guy's got a ton of ability. They did not use him a bell cow. So a lot of people are going to be kind of scared off because Blake Corum got 1 million carries in college. Braylon Allen got 1 million carries in college. Jonathan Brooks, who most people have as their RB1, only had 1 year as a starter at Texas because he was behind Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson. So at Texas, he only had 1 year as a starter and he tore his ACL. Now, the hope would be, for most people saying the ACL wasn't that bad of a tear. They think he's going to be back. He's probably going to miss OTAs and maybe some rookie stuff, but they think he's going to possibly be back for spring spring training. He's going to be back for camp. You know, preseason camp. I don't know why I've got baseball in the mind. Spring training. He's going to be back for camp. So a lot of people are like, "Hey, even with the ACL tear, he showed me enough at Texas. He's my RB1." And then say if Jonathan Brooks get drafted in the 2nd round by the Dallas Cowboys, dude, he's going to fly up draft boards.
Absolutely.
Fly up draft boards. So right now, getting him, and he went at the end of the 2nd round. To me, though, even unless there is just a crazy landing spot I love from these 3 or 4 guys, Trey Benson's going to be the guy for me. And the reason it is, he doesn't have a lot of he has not taken much tread off the tires at all. He has not been overworked in college. He's come back from the injury. He's got nice hands. He didn't have a ton of catches in college, but man, if you go back and look when they got him the ball, he made some really nice back shoulder catches on the sideline where he gets his feet down, where he looked like a wide receiver. He took screens out of the backfield where he looked really nice. I just think he has a really good profile. I love his balance. He's a guy that takes hits and bounces off of guys and keeps going.
Yeah, so, 6'1", 214 also.
Yep,
so, I mean, that's
Trey Benson is my guy unless somebody else ends up in just a prime position and he ends up in a terrible one, would he slide? But even if he slides, he's probably not sliding past the 4th RB for me.
Yeah,
and I think Blake Corum, here's the thing I think for him. I think he is absolutely going to depend on where he lands. If he gets a really good landing spot, here's the thing. If he goes to Los Angeles Chargers with Jim Harbaugh there, if he gets drafted by Harbaugh, who loves him from Michigan, he is going to fly up draft boards because people are going to assume that they're going to use him exactly like they did at Michigan, where he was a touchdown machine. They pounded the rock inside to him. But now take him and put him on a team that already has a couple really good running backs. Say Blake Corum goes to the Jets. He's going to plummet. He's going to plummet because people are like, oh man, Brees Hall's going to get all the work. There's no way he's going to get touches. He's going to fall out of the second round, probably in the third, maybe in the fourth round in drafts. So that's what you have to look at. Do you like Blake Corum because you think he has the ability to be a really good NFL running back? Or do you like the college production and you're like, if he ends up here, I'm taking him. So that's where you have to be careful, I think, on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are familiar with the name Blake Corum from the championship game and things like that, and playing at Michigan, who's on TV a lot. So, I get it, but
guy had an absolute spectacular college career. I will not knock that at all. The question for him is, he's just not a huge burst guy. He doesn't have a ton of speed. He's pretty small.
Right.
Can he still make it in the NFL? I think he can because the guy's just tough. And, I liked the metrics aren't everything. I know there's guys that are just like, oh, well, you got to look at the 40 time. You got to look at his, 3-cone drill. There's some guys that are just football players. They're just ballers. It doesn't matter. He feels like one of those guys to me. Now, will I be drafting him super high in drafts? No. But if he falls to me, I could see myself grabbing him late second round, early third if he falls.
Probably third. I'm more of a third. He's like my fourth, maybe even fifth running back in this draft.
He's like fourth, fifth, depending on landing spot for me. I'm the same way you. I like Trey Banson's probably my one. I'm probably leaning Jonathan Brooks 2, Braylon Allen 3, and I'm like right there with Bucky Irvin, Blake Corum at 4 or 5. I kind of like Bucky a little more than Blake, even though he's kind of small too. But I kind of like those guys. And then, there's a lot of guys I like in this draft that I'm going to be taking shots late. There's a lot of running backs I like that they could absolutely never play it down, but they also could bust out. And I'm probably, if I can, I'm going to take wide receiver early, and I'm going to take a million shots in the dark on these other guys in the late third, fourth, fifth round.
Sure, absolutely, yes. If they go before me, then it is what it is. But all right, so then we get back to wide receivers again after. So we're round 2. They're only in the beginning of round 2, and it's been 35 minutes. But here we go: Brian Thomas, Trey Benson, Blake Corum, and then we end up with Adonai Mitchell from Texas, Tez Walker, North Carolina. JJ McCarthy finally went from Michigan. So good, another quarterback off the board. Lad McConkey from Georgia, who had pretty impressive season. So he kind of shined at the Senior Bowl. Also, everybody loves him over there. Xavier Legette, who is like falling down draft boards right now. He's
another one. I know people. I had saw people mocking him late first round to like the 49ers. And now I've seen people's going, he's not even no way going before the third round.
Because they found out he's like 3 inches shorter and 15 pounds lighter than he. It looks like
there's going to be a ton of people that are out on him because he only had one good year and he only had a good year in his 5th year as a senior. Right. I actually like Xavier Legette. I had him in a ton of C2C teams. I really like him. If he gets to me in the late second, I'm snagging him up.
Yeah,
he was going a lot earlier, but I think he's dropping late. Lad McConkey is moving up some people's boards. I'm not a Devontae Walker guy. He feels like another Jalen Hyatt to me. Yeah. I just don't love him. I could see people liking him. Adonai Mitchell, I'm so on him. If he falls to me in the right spot, I would definitely take him. I'm not anti him, so he's a guy I like. JJ McCarthy, I think, is where you're going to see some movement. I think there's a really decent chance he goes in the first round of the NFL draft. I think there's a really solid chance he goes first round. If he doesn't, he goes early to mid second round, and we're going to get a Will Levis situation with people trying to trade up early into the second to get him if he doesn't go in the first. If that happens and Penix and Knicks don't go, you're going to see JJ McCarthy in a 2 QB or a super flex league jump up into that mid second round. Mid first round. Yeah, I could see him going above a lot of those wide receivers in that first round if that ends up happening.
Yeah, it's all landing spot dependent for that kind of thing. Then after that, Jatavion Sanders, tight end in Texas, probably by far the second tight end in this draft. Maybe even there's some sleeper tight ends in this draft, but these are the studs anyway.
I think Bowers and him are clear cut 1 and 2, and Sanders again, landing spot's going to matter a little bit for him, but he's got super athletic. I think he's got a great profile to be a really good NFL tight end.
Yeah. Braylon Allen, Jonathan Brooks, two more running backs. And then to round out the end of the second round, Roman Wilson, Michigan, who I've been kind of on from the early. Some people don't like him. I think he's just he's one of those guys, just a good football player, good separator. He catches the ball pretty well, good quickness, body control. He looks like just a guy who just he does things perfect. He's kind of like a route artist, kind of, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he's a fast guy. Obviously, Michigan didn't throw the ball a lot, so he didn't get a chance to have a high production. I think, again, you're going to see NFL teams are really in on him or out on him. I could see him going pretty early, and I could see him dropping. But I think he's going to be landing spot dependent. If he ends up on the Bears, are people going to love him? If he ends up on the Bengals, say T. Higgins leaves and the Bengals take Roman Wilson, there's a good chance a lot of people would jump up on him, thinking that maybe he's got a shot to be the number 2 there behind Jamar Chase if that happens. If, say, they took him in the late second or even early, like in the third, say they took him early third, I could see him moving up draft boards because of that. But, we're going to get in the mix here where a lot of these guys, where they land, and a lot of it's going to be like, where did you like him beforehand? Well, I loved Roman Wilson beforehand. So even if this other guy went to this team that seems like a better spot, I'm probably taking Roman Wilson anyway. So I think you're just going to have that with some of these wideouts after this point.
Yeah, round 2, Brian Thomas, Trey Benson, Blake Corum, Adonai Mitchell, Tez Walker, J.J. McCarthy, Ladd McConkey, Xavier Legette, Tavion Sanders, Braylon Allen, Jonathan Brooks, and Roman Wilson. So 301, Jermaine Burton. What do you think about that? Because a lot of people didn't have.
So Jermaine Burton is a guy, he was a really highly rated high school kid, went to Alabama, didn't get a ton of looks as far as production wise. He's a guy that, again, I think if he has a really good pro day and I think he looks good at the combine, I could see him jumping ahead of some guys. I mean, I could, if he ends up coming out and, looking really great, could he do like a Jonathan Mingo where all of a sudden somebody falls in love with him and takes him in the second round of the NFL draft? If that happens, you could see him early second round pick in fantasy drafts.
Mm-hmm.
But it just kind of depends on where he hits. I like him okay. I need to go back and look at him a little more just because, again, he didn't get a ton of production in college, but he was playing with a ton of really good wide receivers most of his career. So it wasn't like, oh, he was sitting behind a bunch of bums. He was playing with some absolute studs. So he's a guy, people kind of like him, his profile. Right after him, Jalen Polk, Washington wide receiver. He's going to be one of those guys, some people really like him. I've read a couple of profiles on him where people are like, I actually think Jalen Polk is closer to Rome Odunze than people realize. And I've seen other ones like, he was only good because McMillan got hurt. And once McMillan got hurt, then his production went way up. But before Nate McMillan Jalen McMillan, excuse me, not the basketball player, Nate McMillan, Jalen McMillan on Washington got hurt. He wasn't that great. I like Polk a lot, and I think if he ends up in the right spot because he does play a little more slot, I think he could be. He's a guy I definitely have my eye on. If he ends up getting to me somewhere in the third round, I'm probably jumping on him, and I'm probably taking Polk over Burton. If I went right now, I would take Polk over Burton, and I'm probably taking Polk over Roman Wilson as well.
Probably also. He's generating a lot of buzz right now, Jalen Polk. So after him went Bucky Irving from Oregon, a fan favorite of yours and many other people. Ricky Pearsall from Florida, good separator. He's good out of his breaks. Just a good solid receiver. Marshawn Lloyd, another guy who's a 4-star prospect. He does a lot of he can do both. He's good at catching the ball. He's good at running the ball. He's possibly an early third round pick probably. We'll see what happens with that, depending on if team needs a running back.
Yeah, he's a guy who I've seen people, some pretty well known people, call him RB1 for them. So there's some people that love him. So we're going to end up seeing where he ends up going in the NFL. Bucky Irvin, he's a guy who's got all the explosiveness, but he's small.
Yeah,
and that's people hate when a running back's under 200. He's under 200. Guy's got a lot of speed. I like both those guys. I was almost took Bucky Irvin with the 3-2. I took 3-2. I took Jalen Polk. And like I said, if he gets me in the third round, I'm probably taking him. If I didn't take Benson at 2-2 and I went wide receiver, I probably would have ended up going Bucky Irvin at 3-2. My mindset just kind of let people know Bucky Irvin went right after me. And I was between Polk and Irvin there.
I mean, Lloyd's 5'9", 217, a little stocky dude, but he catches the ball. He's probably the reason he's going so high is because of his PPR aspect of his game. He's probably the best receiving back in this draft. You know, that's where he is. That's where he's going to bread his butter at, probably in the NFL, is being a big guy that can run between the tackles. First of all, not a big tall guy. I don't want a guy that's 6'1" and stands up, running through the middle of the field. He's 5'9" and 217, and he's a good PPR guy. So that's
for me. If you like Lloyd, I don't know how you don't like Trey Benson, because I feel like they're very similar types of players.
Sure.
Sure. Benson's just that hair bigger, but not much. I think it's just a little taller. But I think they both have really nice receiving profiles. I think they both can do a little bit of everything. So if I miss Benson in a draft, like he doesn't get to me, there's a decent shot I'll be looking for Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah. Malachi Corley, Johnny Wilson, a couple receivers went off the board. Corley's been, man, talk about polarizing. This guy's been number 3 receiver, number 17 receiver. Like up and down to every board I've seen, this guy's somewhere else. People love him or they can't stand him. Just probably from a smaller school that's Western Kentucky. They don't love the guy. He doesn't have much tape on him. So good players are good players. Doesn't matter where they go to school at. You got to look at that. But Johnny Wilson from Florida State, Will Shipley and Audric Estime from the University of Notre Dame. Everybody that comes out of Notre Dame is a pro, so he should be RB1 in this class, is all I'm saying.
Some people love him. A lot of people like him, man. The guy's got a good size. He's young still.
20 years old.
If he ends up in the right situation, him and Braylon Allen, because they're both bigger guys, I think people are going to wait to see where they land.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if they're like, oh, that guy's in a power offense, I think people are going to like him more than if they end up more in a spread offense. They're like, oh, are they going to really use them correctly if it's more of a spread RPO type offense? Johnny Wilson's going to be really interesting. Dude is a beast. Does he move to tight end? This is what the question is going to be. He's 6'7", 237. If he can put on a few pounds, get up closer to 245, 250 at 6'7", he could be a pretty intriguing tight end. I would like him if he ends up being listed as a tight end. To me, I think that moves him up draft boards, especially fantasy draft boards with tight end premiums, because I think he's a better tight end than he is a wide receiver. As far as him being on the outside doing that, I think he will fit better as a slot guy that is playing kind of that tight end role. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets that from scouts to say, hey, you might want to bulk up a bit and kind of tell everybody you're going to be a tight end and not a wide receiver.
Here's a question. Johnny Wilson, okay, let's just say he does say, I'm moving to tight end. Who would you take, him or Theo Johnson?
Ooh, that's a toughie. I need to look more at Theo Johnson. He's a guy that kind of was late on my radar, so I kind of like him. I definitely need to look harder into him to see who I like and where they land. That's a toughie, man. I love grabbing tight end. So Johnny Wilson's a guy, if he's going to move the tight end, he's a guy I would take with the idea I'm going to stash him on a taxi squad.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to play him for at least a year, probably 2. And I'm going to see if he can develop, because he's going to have that huge upside. But if he ends up not being able to make the transition to tight end, I mean, he could be out of the league with 0 catches. Yeah. So he's just kind of one of those guys. So if I can get him for a nice price, I'd take him. If maybe at wide receiver, if he falls, I wouldn't take him here in the middle of the 3rd. Too many guys I like. But if he fell like, say, to the 5th round, and I'd like, I got some space, I can stash him somewhere, I would maybe take him and go, hey, maybe he moves the tight end. Maybe he's worth holding on to. But I would, to me, the 3rd is a little high for a guy you just don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah. Hopefully he'll change his position before rookie camp comes. So
yeah, because the couple guys that came after him were guys I would absolutely draft in front of him in this draft.
Yeah, we'll get to those guys. So Will Shipley, Audric Estime, Jalen McMillan, Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's kid. Everybody knows that. That's hilarious. Theo Johnson, and then that was the 3rd round. So let's 25 is Jermaine Burton. And then Jalen Polk, Bucky Irvin, Ricky Pearsall, Marshawn Lloyd, Malachi Corley, Johnny Wilson, Will Shipley, Audric Estime, Jalen McMillan, and Brennan Rice, and Theo Johnson was the last pick out of Penn State. I like Theo Johnson. Good hands. He's 900 yards and 12 touchdowns over his career, and 34 for almost 407 touchdowns this year. So I mean, he's a proven tight end. He can do it. Penn State's usually a great defense. Great defense. Kind of a slow, methodical offense kind of deal. But
well, you never know where he can go. I mean, Brenton Strange, nobody wasn't on anybody's radar, and he goes second round last year. You know, if Theo Johnson ends up going in the second or early third round in a draft, I think he sneaks into the early to mid third round in fantasy drafts. So now that I think about that, I would take Theo Johnson over Johnny Wilson for sure.
Very good.
Now that I think about it more, you're right. I'm absolutely taking Theo Johnson over Johnny Wilson.
I would too. All right, and then round 3 starts. Round 4.
Yep.
Cade Stover, Ohio State, another tight end to start the draft off. Jacob Cowing, Arizona. Spencer Rattler, who's he's kind of killing his draft stock lately. I don't know. I mean, everybody says he had a great day. Everybody said he had a bad day. It's somebody who I just feel like he's from someone who's talked about so much before to where he is right now. It's kind of like he fell off the face of the earth as far as the draft stock is concerned. Spencer Rattler was like a household name last year, and now it's
Spencer. He was on a QB1 show with Justin Fields when he was in high school.
Right.
You know, they were on a TV show that followed them around their entire high school career. So they went to Oklahoma. He ended up getting replaced by Caleb Williams. Some tough when you get replaced by the guy that's going to be the 1-1. So it just never happened. Here's the thing. I'm not totally sold on Spencer Rattler, but in a 2 QB or super flex, if he falls, depending on where he gets drafted, he's worth a dart throw. Because there's going to be an NFL team that thinks they can take the talent and they can mold him and they can fix him. I just know there's a couple quarterback coaches and offense coordinators out there like, you give me him for a couple years, I'm going to make this guy a winner. So he's going to be a guy kind of like a Stetson Bennett, even though he had, way better pedigree, obviously, than Stetson Bennett coming out of high school and in college. But he's going to be those guys that somebody's going to take a shot at him in the mid rounds.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a question of who does it and where you take him. I don't hate it here in the 4th round. I took Jacob Cowing at the 4-2. He's a guy that's up and down. He's a guy that some people love, some people hate. Some people thought man, his production was pretty good in college, but it's not great. Other people are going to look at, I see people say, well, he just doesn't do anything really good. He's like a solid wide receiver, but he doesn't do anything really good. How is he going to win in the NFL? He's a guy, if he gets in the 4th round, I'm taking a shot on him. Mm-hmm. He could end up doing nothing, but he's also one of those guys that could end up looking at all the metrics and you're like, this guy shouldn't be good. And then he gets on an NFL team and he just keeps making catches on 3rd and 5 all day long. So he's a guy, I'm not going to reach for him. If you would have said before last season, I would have taken him a lot earlier. He's fallen down my list a bit. I love him in the 4th, maybe late 3rd, depending on who else is still laying around. But he's a guy that's gone down my list, but a guy I still want.
I like him too. And then, so then AJ Barner is next, tight end. I think he's just more of a blocking tight end. He's more of an NFL player than a fantasy guy. So I would kind of avoid him. Frank Gore Jr., that's your boy, Southern Miss. Good receiver, especially in the couple of the scenes, the Senior Bowl, the showed off his catching skills, which everybody kind of knew I already had anyway, but the biggest thing. Well, the biggest thing for Frank Gore is he was on a really bad Southern Miss team. Yeah. Like he was like the entire team. He ended up playing quarterback quite a bit for them, which is crazy. He actually ran the ball out of the Wildcat a lot, and he would throw a couple passes a game. I had him on a couple CFF and C2C teams. He was great for that purpose. Last year, he had an absolute monster game in the bowl game 2 years ago for them. They actually ended up playing in a bowl game, and he ended up having, I can't even remember what it was, but it was like a bowl game record. He had like almost 400 yards rushing. It was insanity. He's a guy I'm late flyer. He's on my list. It almost doesn't even matter landing spot for him. For me, I'm going to take a late flyer on him somewhere. If he gets to me mid to late 4th round, or if he crawls into the 5th round, that's a smash for me. I'm taking Frank Gore. I just like him. Same thing with Ray Davis, old Vanderbilt running back who's now went to Kentucky last year. He's the guy just found the end zone, had a decent receiving profile.
really interesting to see where he goes in the draft. He's a guy to me, I could see NFL teams liking him more than like fantasy players necessarily. And I could see him being a little closer to that second tier than guys are giving him credit for as far as running backs are concerned. He's a guy I wouldn't be surprised if somebody took a late shot at like late third, early fourth on him in the NFL draft. I like him. He's the guy I like. I'm probably taking him before Gore personally. I like Davis just a little bit more than Gore. I think he's proven it at the best level at the SEC. So that's a guy I'm looking for. Ray Davis. I'm looking for Frank Gore. Those are two of the running backs I like late in drafts if I can get them.
Yeah, Ray Davis to have go two different schools, get two different individual 1,000-yard rushing seasons, and 28 touchdowns over his career. So I mean, that's I think he's very versatile. He'll be he's not going to be he's a smaller dude. That's his only problem. That's his big mock. He's not a big dude. He's more like a Michael Carter kind of dude. But I like Michael Carter, man.
He's 5'10", 215. I mean, he's got decent size. So
215. I thought he came in like 205 or something like that.
He might have been a little. He was listed 215. I think he might have been 205. But again, we talk about it, as long as you're over that 200-pound range, 205 to 210, most people are pretty good with it. He to me, Ray Davis is one of those guys that get drafted. You look at the depth chart; he's third on the depth chart, and by mid-season, he's crushing in fantasy. Like guys get hurt, he ends up getting. Say he was on like Tampa Bay took him for some reason. You see like Rachaad White get her. Obviously, my boy Sean Tucker's still there, so I love that. But I'm just using as an example. Say he ended up on like a Tampa Bay, and then White gets nicked, Edmonds gets nicked, and all of a sudden Ray Davis comes in and Ray Davis just takes over. I mean, I could totally see something like that happening. So he's a guy, again, I'm going to have my feelers out for him in drafts. Where I'm going to have to draft him, that's iffy to me. If he gets to the fourth round, that's a smash for me.
I feel like he's not going to make it to the fourth round.
I don't think he will. No, this one at 4-6, I think, was really late. I think he's going to have to be picked more in the Bucky Irvin, Marshawn Lloyd list at the early third, mid third. I think you're going to have to go there to get him.
Dylan Lobb went next, and then Jamari Thrash, and then Rashid Ali.
Rashid Ali is another guy I like a lot. He got hurt out of Marshall. He got hurt at the Senior Bowl. I think torn bicep it was, or pec, something like that. He's going to be out for a while. I think that really hurts him because he was looking good. I think people are liking what they're seeing out of him. But then the issue for him is, how long is he out, and, not being able to do, pro day, all that stuff, I think is going to hurt his stock. He's the guy that's going to be on my list because I could see him, because of the injury, dropping to like 6th, 7th round in the NFL draft. But he's a guy, he proved a lot in college. He's, to me, he's a dart throw. I love, if he gets to the 5th round, I'm on him in the 5th. Went 4-9 here. That's probably a decent spot to take him. But he's definitely another one of those running backs I want to keep my eye out for.
Not fantastic between the tackles, but he did have 75 receptions in college too. And he's a good between the tackles. I mean, he is a good runner, but he's just, it looks
like had unbelievable stats. CFF, if you play any just college only, he was a 1st-round pick in CFF last 2 years. I mean, he was a guy that was ultra productive, and he was ultra productive as a freshman. So that's what people got to realize. I mean, this guy, it wasn't like he waited till his senior year to crush it at Marshall. He came in and crushed it right away at Marshall. So he's a guy I like. He's definitely on my radar of, really Ray Davis, Frank Gore, Rashid Ali, and we'll talk about Cody Schrader's not on here because he wasn't in the list, so he didn't get drafted. But those are 4 guys that I've got my eye all over late in drafts.
To end the 4th round here, we had DeCorian or JT Clark, as you can see him on. If you look him on YouTube, you can find him either one, DeCorian or JT Clark. Big dude, Texas San Antonio. Yep. Another guy at 6'3", 215-ish, So
really solid production in college.
Yeah,
really good college year. He's going to be interesting to see where somebody takes him. I could see him being like a late 4th, 5th rounder in the NFL, but I could see a team like him. The guy's got good size. I think he's going to shot. At this point, you're just taking a shot on any of these guys. You don't know if they're going to make it, what they're going to do. But he's a guy I like, really good in college.
Jermichael Sturdivant from UCLA. And then you got pick 48, Jaheim Bell, Florida State.
I like that pick by you. You took him. He's the kind of a tweener for a tight end, little small, 6'3", about 235. But he's just so athletic. You saw at Florida State, they handed the ball off to him like he was a running back. They did all kinds of things with him. He's a guy where if he ends up on a team with like a really inventive offense, like a Kansas City, I think he flies up draft boards.
Yeah.
Because I think people are like, oh, they're going to figure out a way to use him. And he's so athletic. He's just, he's like that guy he comes out of high school and they just list him as athlete. That's what he is. He's just athlete.
Yeah.
And so I think for him, if he ends up on a place where they can use him, I think he moves up fantasy draft boards. Obviously, how productive is it going to be if he only gets, certain catches, plays here and there? But he's a guy I like for that reason.
Yeah, I just think he's going to be a best ball guy at best ever in the NFL.
I agree. You're probably true on that.
He's not going to. He doesn't block that well, so he's more of a gimmick guy than anything. So that kind of thing. And a fullback, not even a fullback, but like a versatile back in the backfield.
If you could get a team that you could kind of use him as an H-back / tight end, that's where I think he could actually really be good in the NFL.
Then start the round 5. We had Torrey Horton, which he
he's in the list, but he ended up going back to school, Colorado State. He's going to be a guy to keep an eye on because this was just such a loaded wide receiver class. He ended up going back to school. Think it's a good decision. I think he has a chance to be a top 5 to top 10 wide receiver next year's draft.
Yeah, next year's draft. Then you had Dylan Hulker, Trey McBride's old school. Guy had 64 receptions, 760 yards, and 6 touchdowns this year. And so good to see, good year, final year in college. So that's you can't obviously someone that would probably when more people recognize him, more people get to know him. His name's probably gonna go up draft boards a little bit.
Mm-hmm. He's the guy. I love stashing tight ends and leagues that have taxi. He is that guy for me.
This is
if I could get him in the 5th round, and that's why I took him here. Again, another one of my picks, 5-2. If I can get a guy like this in the 5th round and put him on my taxi squad in a tight end premium league, and he hits in 3 years, golden, absolutely golden.
This is what round 5 is for in fantasy football. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Mayan Williams, running back, Chase McClellan, who's another guy who's kind of
he's all over the place.
Now.
Man, yeah. I see McClellan. Some people love him. Absolutely love him out of Alabama. Mm-hmm. I've seen him, top 8 running backs for a lot of people, and then I've seen him like 15th on other lists. So he's going to be an interesting guy to kind of see what happens. Mayan Williams, real productive at Ohio State. When Travion Henderson got hurt, and then kind of disappeared this last year. Yeah. They didn't use him a lot. He's kind of banged up. Real interesting because he's a short guy, but real stocky. Really interesting to see if he gets a shot somewhere.
Ben Sinnott, tight end, another name that's a little undersized. 700 receiving yards almost with 6 touchdowns this year. He was most of the offense for K-State. So, he had some drops, played, was a fullback previously to this. So, that he could block. Someone to keep an eye on also. It might be a part of a defense or part of almost like a George Kittle kind of player, that kind of deal.
I love it. He's another stash. I love that 5th round. He's a guy I'm going to have my eye out for in the 5th round as a tight end stash for sure.
Moose Muhammad. I don't know who.
He's out of Texas A&M. They kind of had some messes. He was actually a pretty highly rated guy. They had some problems on offense. He was like their 2nd, 3rd wide receiver. Evan Stewart, who just transferred to Oregon, was their number 1. Evan Stewart, a lot of people, I should say, have him as the number 1 wide receiver in next year's class. Mm-hmm. So he was kind of behind him. They had some quarterback issues. There were some injuries at Texas A&M, so he kind of fell down the list. He's worth a shot. He's a guy that I think could impress because he's got pretty good athleticism. He's about 6 foot, right at the 200 mark. So he's an interesting guy. I don't mind taking a flyer on him in the 5th.
All right. I wasn't really familiar with him, so I haven't done too much research on him. Jordan Travis, quarterback, went. Then Isaiah Davis went. Missouri Gatorade Player of the Year 2 years in a row. Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year. Great frame. That kind of, just kind of runs over defenders kind of guy. So, you as kind of a Missouri fan, you know anything about the state of Missouri and Isaiah Davis?
Yeah, so he didn't go to Mizzou, but
right.
He was player of the year. The guy's got good size, got good speed. He played at the what do they call it now? The FBS level or whatever it is.
Yeah.
FCS level. So yeah, he was South Dakota State, if I'm correct. Is that right? I need to probably look that up real quick. I'm pretty sure he was South Dakota State Jackrabbits. So, but he was pretty solid there. A guy that was just a really productive career. I think he's going to be a 6th, 7th round pick in the NFL draft. But again, at the end of your fantasy drafts, we've seen it all over the place. All guys need is an opportunity sometimes. Just a couple guys get hurt in front of them, and they can end up making an impact. So he's definitely a guy I don't mind taking this late in the draft.
Yeah, then Michael Pratt, quarterback, Anaya Smith, Bryson Nesbitt, tight end. Not familiar with him. And then, of course, my pick, Joe Milton. Pick number 60.
Joe Milton, the huge arm, Joe Milton. It'll be interesting to see. There's people that had hopes that he would be this year's Anthony Richardson. I just don't see that happening. Even if he goes to combine and looks really good, I just can't see a team taking him earlier than maybe the 3rd round. I think somebody will take a shot on him just for the skill level. Michael Pratt, to me, is really interesting out of Tulane. He's a guy that is just really solid career. A lot of big games at Tulane that he helped win. I could see him being a 3rd round pick and somebody like really loving him, and him actually going, higher in a super flex league because of the chance that he could back up a guy and that guy could get hurt. So I like Michael Pratt. I think by the time the draft rolls around and the draft actually happens, I think he's going to get drafted higher than people think. I think he'll end up being one of those guys that somebody drafts 3rd round of their fantasy league because he went in the 3rd round of the NFL draft.
Yeah, 1,100 yards, rushing yards, and 28 touchdowns. Was
he was a little banged up too. Yeah, a lot of banged up for part of his career, but he's a guy I really like. Jordan Travis, obviously Florida State, led them to the undefeated season before he got that gruesome injury. It's going to be interesting to see how that affects his stock. I've seen some people like, oh, we should take Jordan Travis in the 3rd or 4th round. That seems way high for me. I liked him in college. Good player. I don't really see it at the next level for him. He's right at 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's decent athleticism, but he's not really a guy that runs. He's got a decent arm. I can see a team taking a shot on him, but to me, I just think he's maybe a late in the draft. Somebody picks him up and just throws him on their IR and kind of lets him heal up or their pup list and kind of like sees what happens with him. But he's not a guy I think is going to go real high in the draft. Aeneas Smith, somebody a lot of people are starting to like. I'm pretty sure he was one of those A&M guys. So people are liking him up the board. Bryson Nesbitt was a tight end at North Carolina. He had a lot more hype coming into this season.
Yeah.
And didn't really produce the way people thought. So he's kind of fallen down the list. But, nice ending to the draft. And we'll obviously over the next couple of months see these draft lists. Guys are going to go up and down all over the place, depending on where we're at.
You do know that Joe Milton threw over, or just about 70% at the Senior Bowl. So just because he had that one miss that he, underthrew his
that really, Bill, that's the only way. The best is that's the one everyone showed was the really terrible throw to the running back out of the backfield where he's half jogging. And honestly, part of me thinks he kind of threw it in the ground on purpose.
Yeah,
because there was a defender there, so it wasn't like, oh, if he gunned it into the guy was like gonna make the catch and get any yards. So I wouldn't totally kill him on that. Like I said, somebody's gonna take Joe Milton. Just the athletic profile is just insane. He's 6'5", 235, just absolute cannon of an arm. Somebody's going to take a shot on him.
They got a rat hole as Josh Freeman right now. It's all I hear is Josh Freeman. It's a big arm. He can't throw the ball. Okay, that's fine.
People forgot Josh Freeman was actually drafted pretty high in the NFL draft, if I remember.
Yeah, I'm not. That's fine. Let him drop all the way to 5th round. I'll trade up. I'll trade somebody away and pick Joe Milton if he's not going yet in the 5th round for sure in every draft I'm in. So it's all right, man. I can wait a year or two with Joe Milton with a guy a big dude who can run fast with a cannon arm. I'll take a chance on that, and hopefully he'll just fall in somewhere in a great situation with some great jump ball players, and just make it happen. So whatever.
I'll keep a 5th round open for you. I'll maybe trade you a 5th rounder for Joe Milton.
Yeah. What if the Vikings re-sign Kirk Cousins and then they sign Joe Milton behind him and they sit for 2 years behind? That kind of deal. I mean, that would be a perfect situation for him.
I see. Those are the type of situations where people are going to talk themselves into Joe Milton. And so, like, again, if they end up taking him and they don't take any other QB, people are going to be like, "Ooh, is Joe Milton the guy behind Cousins?" Maybe, maybe not. But at this point is where you got to play that high upside game. It's just the way it is. You got to say, "Hey, could this guy be a stud one day?" Yeah. Is there a chance he's a 0? Absolutely. It happens all the time. But hey, if you're getting a guy in the 5th round, anything you ever get out of him, you're going to be excited about.
I'm here for it, baby.
If you hit gold and you strike gold with him, you're a genius.
A genius. So this was call me. I'm going to start making my genius hat now. Okay. Just so the 5th round went Dallin Hooker, Mayan Williams, Jace McClellan, Ben Sinnott, Moose Muhammad, Jordan Travis, Isaiah Davis, Michael Pratt, Anais Smith, Bryson Nesbitt, and Joe Milton. Some guys who were not drafted in this draft. Juwan Edwards from Georgia, Jalen Wright from Tennessee, Jalen Baker, Luke McCaffrey from Rice, Kendall Milton, who I like him a lot, Corey Schrader, a guy, like we said, he wasn't even on the board to draft at all, Kamani Vidal, moving up a lot of people's draft boards right now, Sam Hartman might be a career backup if he makes the NFL, but I mean, he looked okay at Notre Dame. Amani Bailey, another guy, played behind Kendre Miller, good player. Jared Wiley, Brevin Spanford, Carter Bradley, guys like that. But there's a couple guys that were not drafted in this draft that there's probably a couple more that I don't have on my list here. But
yeah, Spanford's a guy I like. I think he could end up getting drafted higher than people realize in the real NFL draft. I think that can move him up. A guy I like, I saw a ton of, was Isaiah Williams from Illinois. Played his entire career as a quarterback in high school. Came to Illinois as a quarterback, ended up moving to wide receiver. He ended up being a big play guy for them on a team that really did not throw the ball well. He's a guy that I'm really interested to see where he goes in the NFL draft, because he's a guy I would possibly take a shot on. And then another running back, because you know me, I love my running backs. Blake Watson out of Memphis. I think went Old Dominion first, played last year at Memphis. He's a little undersized, about 5'8", about 190 or so, but nice receiving profile. Good shake on him. He's a guy I like. He's another one of those that he's going to be on my list late in drafts to maybe, if I miss out on some of these other running backs, somebody else snags them before me, and I end up with a wide receiver or a tight end, I'm probably going to look to maybe add Watson as well. So he's another guy that I had in my queue coming up in this draft.
All right. So that is our 5 round. This is the first one. These are fun. I know that, a little bit over an hour, but I mean, that's par for the course for our shows. But these drafts are fun, and the more I'm going to do a little more research every week. A couple more guys are going to pop in these drafts. I like to see the movement. I love trending. It's my favorite thing to do in these things. So we're probably once every couple of weeks, we'll probably do another one of these. Even before and even after, we'll just have an impromptu show, or just a Thursday afternoon or Tuesday afternoon show about these mock drafts we hold. If you're interested in joining one, just let me know. Inbox me, inbox JT, anybody. But another thing is, if you get a chance, can you subscribe to the Commissioner Evaluation YouTube channel? I just had it out kind of all redone. There's a link tree on there for all my stuff. There's all, I'm super, super happy that I was able to get a hold of Clay Travis, Dynasty Trades in 5 Clays, as you guys would know him anyway. So Clay went in there and just kind of looked over my Dynasty Evaluation YouTube page and redid the whole thing for me. I sent him a couple bucks for his troubles. He said, no, don't worry about it. I sent it to him anyway because the guy deserves it. But a lot of good work. If you get a chance, it's on my Twitter profile. Just go on there, the link tree. It's linked on my profile. Go in there, follow it, follow the channel, subscribe if you get a chance. And then that's all I got going on. JT, what else new with you?
Yeah, just doing a lot of mock drafts, kind of get set up for stuff. Writing some articles here on DLF. If you're a DLF member, I've got my 1 QB draft coming out, showing you kind of my rankings, who I would take in what order if you're in a 1 QB draft. I know we get really big into 2 QB super flex these days, but I know a ton of people are still in 1 QB leagues, and the number one question for people are, what is the value of QBs in a 1 QB league? So I kind of try to hit that in this draft. Look out for my article. It should be coming out on Friday on DLF. If you're a DLF member, should be kind of my little breakdown of how I would do a 1 QB draft and where guys kind of rank on that. Also on DLF, if you're going to play IDP, I always bring that up. I got my rankings on there. My rookie rankings for the draft are up. So those I'll keep updating throughout the process. So I've got that stuff going on as well. And we're, now that we're in Dynasty football season, I'm cranking up a lot of my hockey content on the Stew with JT Brew every Wednesday. I do a hockey show called NHL Around the Ice with my boy Toast Clark, my buddy Brian. We've been hitting that up, and then we've been throwing some betting out. So Toast Takes. So if you're into that, looking for some hockey bets now that football after the Super Bowl, if you're dying for something to look for, check us out. We're doing all kinds of hockey bets on Toast Takes on the X. We also are posting those written content. If you want a little more why we're taking what we're taking, that's on Apex Sports. So if you go to Apex Sports, we're actually posting those there as well.
I'm actually going to be, I believe I'll be starting up, JT, brace yourself for this, okay? A 12-team Dynasty IDP included league in this. I think I'm going to join the IDP ranks here and get in some defensive players. Maybe
you got to get one. Got to get one in there. We need one IDP, John McGlynn home league. We need one IDP home league.
Everybody who says it loves it. Everybody, so I'm going to join. I think I'm going to join the ranks. I'm going to go down the rabbit hole, the IDP. I think this offseason. So
I love it.
If you're interested in it, have at it. I'll start that up. We'll get that going as soon as we get 12 people who want to do the entire. First, I got to get some scoring straightened out and figure out the rosters.
I can work you with that. I've been running IDP, my main IDP league. The first one I ever got into, I started with a buddy. We're on year 8 or 9 now, I think. So, we've been kind of adjusting the scoring at that. I'm in a handful of IDP leagues now. But I do have a couple of people that ask me about joining IDP leagues. They're like, hey, if you get an opening, let me know. I was like, okay, I'll put you on the list. So I could have some people that want to jump in on this and try it out.
I want to have a big fat league with 11 offensive starters, 11 defensive starters I want scoring. My scoring, JT. I want it to be some high scoring, high flying. I'm talking.
Let's do it, man. You got to get those. I tell you, one of my leagues I tell people all the time, Shaq Leonard was the number 2 scorer overall in the entire league behind whatever the number 1 quarterback was that year. And people were like, what? You had a linebacker score too? I'm like, yep, got to have defense, baby. Can't just rely on all those offensive players. Defense in IDP can win you championships.
Yeah, buddy. Well, I'm going down a rabbit hole, JT. So
I love it. I love it.
Right. All right. So thanks for watching the Commissioner Evaluation Show. And I'll be on tomorrow. We got Fantasy and Frames. Me and JT will be having a round 1 NFL draft with trades. So we'll kind of go in there and say who we think, what we think might happen. Might not be a lot of trades, might be some, tune in, see what you got, and then we'll talk to you later.